Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buckner, aka The Buck, owner, operator of NotInHallOfFame.com, and its sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is week 3, season 1 of our episodic show, where we're going to look at all the various Hall of Fame related news, and when you're going to do that, you always need Evan Nolan aboard. Today, we're going to talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame and a very major retirement that took place in the world of football. Without further ado, here's Evan. Evan, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. How are you, sir?
No complaints. Another huge day. The Baseball Hall of Fame has announced their class of 2020. I don't know about you, but it pretty much went just the way I thought it would.
It actually went better than I thought it would. I thought that the second Canadian would end up being about 6 votes short, just based off of how many he had and how many historically the unannounced ballots go. I thought he'd be about 6 short. And he actually had something out saying that he thought it was going to turn out just short, and he wanted to thank everyone for his support, but Walker got in, which is great.
Yeah, actually, I think he was six votes over. Exactly.
Yeah, he ended up being 6 votes over, correct.
Yeah.
So there's 12. He got 12 more votes than I thought he would, which is fine.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's great news, I think, for the Baseball Hall of Fame. But before we get to Walker, a little bit more on him, who's the guy who didn't vote for Derek Jeter?
We will find out in 2 weeks, maybe, when everything becomes public. But my guess here is that it's possible that someone could have been like, hey, it doesn't matter if Jeter gets unanimous or not. I have 11 guys or 12 guys I want to vote for. Jeter's getting in with or without my vote. I want to make sure, who knows, Bobby Abreu, who is the last guy to get in, gets a vote and make sure he stays on. I mean, that's entirely a possibility. But I don't know.
Impossible.
I mean, I'm a Red Sox
Strategic
fan,
voting.
I think that Jeter. I think we all thought Jeter was getting unanimously. Now that we've already had the seal broken on that last year, so
I was trying to find before we chatted, but I couldn't find it. There was one writer who did vote for Jeter, but he was actually hoping that Jeter wouldn't get in unanimous, sort of citing that it was sort of a shame that Rivera was the first. And while he's sort of not wrong, there was like at least 25 other players that should have been unanimous before Rivera. That's a pretty lousy argument.
Yeah, it's a terrible argument. But hey, baseball Hall of Fame voters have not necessarily been known to do the right thing all the time. Griffey was 99.3%. But you go back and like some of the guys who you in your head would just be no doubt first ballot Hall of Famers. Like Ripken was 98.5. I don't know, just keep going all the way back to Ted Williams and everyone else. That nobody really ended up getting 100% or even close for a long time. Ted Williams got 93.4% way back in 1966 in his only time in the ballot. So they have a long history of not doing the right thing, and just because they did the right thing once doesn't mean they're necessarily going to do it again.
No, very, very true. Very true. So Walker got in, and what I guess two of the things that I sort of thought really tipped the scale is a whole reevaluation of what playing in Coors Field really meant.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Jason Stark actually, I had a really good thing. They used some system which recalibrated his career.
Yes.
Had he been at a neutral 2019 NL ballpark versus Coors Field, and essentially over the course of his career, Coors Field, using whatever system or calculation they have, which is way above my pay grade, there's something like he ended up with 4 extra home runs and 12 extra hits. Like essentially, the Coors Field effect was 4 home runs and 12 hits over the course of his career.
Yeah, it was minimal. Yeah, and I think he was just fell off the 3-4-5 slash line. Yeah, I can't remember whether it was his batting average that dipped below 300 or his on base percentage dipping below 400. But either way, it was minimal.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of amazing though to talk about Walker. The biggest thing for him is just how fast he popped back up. because it looked like 5 years ago he had no shot. Like, if he came on the ballot for the first time in 11, he had 20.3% of the vote. Next year, 22.9. Then 2013, the year they didn't vote anybody, and he dropped to 21.6. So his first 3 years were not even at a quarter yet. Then year 4, when Maddox, Glavin, and Thomas come on, he's all the way down to 10.2. So the idea that he came in the last, from 2014 to 2020, going from 10.2 to 76%, is kind of amazing. It was 10.2, 11.8, 15.5, 21.9, 34.1, 56, 54.6, and now 76.6. I mean, he was at 15% as recently as 2016.
Yeah,
it's kind of amazing
how
fast he rose.
It's crazy. I mean, and I think that sort of also points to the other thing that worked in his favor. Just the glut of people that finally got in, removing the backlog.
Mm-hmm.
There were people who I know said that Walker would have been their 11th guy.
Right. Well, and I think going through the rest of the thing, getting rid of 4 people last year, the biggest, other than Walker, the biggest beneficiary of that on this year's list was Scott Rowland.
Yes.
Rowland went from 7, gained up almost 20 points. Clearly, because the ones he got rid of the 4 people last year and the 2 people this year, I mean, there's just a whole lot more space for people to vote.
Mm-hmm.
2013, they voted nobody in, right? Since then, we've had Maddox, Glavin, Thomas, Randy Johnson, Pedro, Smoltz, Biggio, Griffey, Piazza, Bagwell, Raines, Irod, Chipper, Vlad, Tomey, Trevor Hoffman, Mariano, Roy Halladay, Edgar Martinez, Mike Mussina, Derek Jeter, Larry Walker. That's 22 people since 2013. So that list has just gotten really, really thinned out, and it's made it so some of the people who are at the bottom have had a better chance. I wonder, honestly, if there weren't so many people, if Fred McGriff actually might have made it in.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. Yeah, he was definitely sort of like someone I was thinking a lot more about recently, especially seeing how Sheffield went up a little bit, which I didn't sort of see coming. Well,
I didn't see that one coming either.
Mm-hmm. So the one so the one who's closest now, Kurt Schilling, definitely statistically he should have been in years ago. We know why he's not. He talked his way out of it. Yeah, that too. And pretty much before that interview that you might have seen with Bob Costas, almost an unapologetic one.
Mm-hmm.
It
was weird. It was weird to see how classy his Twitter response to not getting in was. It was almost like, remember you talked about how with the Rock Hall, how 9 Inch Nails. They were just he was Trent Reznor was just ripping the Rock Hall, and all of a sudden was playing nice with them and then got in.
Yes.
It almost feels like Schilling has the feeling he's getting in. He probably should clean up his act. Because I think, honestly, he's the only person, well, not counting the seniors committees, but he's the only person I think who's going to be voted in next year.
That's a very strong possibility. It's a weak group that's coming eligible. So
the top people coming in by WAR are Mark Burley, Tim Hudson, Torrey Hunter, Dan Herron, Barry Zito, AJ Burnett, Aramis Ramirez, Shane Victorino, Grady Sizemore, and Yankee legend Nick Swisher. So, I mean, none of those guys, I guess the top 3 might have an outside shot. Everyone loved Torrey Hunter. So that might help him. Burley was an Iron Man for years for the White Sox, so that could help him. But none of those guys are people who screamed first ballot. Most of them are people who don't even scream stay on the ballot. So they're going to have to vote for somebody. And we didn't see very much movement whatsoever with Bonds and Clemens. They each gained, a percentage point, right? That was actually the thing that made me wonder more. Like, Jeter missed by 1 vote, but Clemens got 1 more vote than Bonds. Who's the dude who votes for Clemens and not Bonds?
Well, that's something that I've always sort of like wondered about, because they're always sort of like within like 1 or 2% of each other, but why are they not the same thing? How do you justify one and not the other?
I don't get it, because clearly if you're voting for one, you've gotten over the fact that there are cheating allegations or something like that, right? Or you've gotten over the fact that we have Bud Selig in the Hall and Joe Torre in the Hall, Tony La Russa in the Hall, who got dragged into that dragged into the Astros cheating scandal this past week.
Yes.
By Blackjack McDowell, God bless him. But if those guys in the hall who benefited or turned a blind eye to what was going on with steroids, then you can't punish the guys who are actually using the steroids. That's the logic that a lot of people are using, right or wrong. I know there are people who disagree with that. Cheaters are cheaters are cheaters. But if the other folks are in, it's kind of hard to make that distinction to me. But if who votes for clearly Clemens has an argument for being the greatest pitcher of all time in baseball history. Bonds also has an argument for being the greatest hitter of all time in baseball history. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying they would be in the discussion absent the drug allegations. So if you've already gotten over it, how is one more person picking Clemens and Bonds? It's like one person's like, yeah, Bonds is a Hall of Famer and he used drugs, but he was a bigger jerk than Clemens. Both of them were jerks, by the way. But he's a bigger jerk than Clemens, so I'm just going to keep him out. Like there's just no logic to that for me.
Oh, absolutely none. And actually, I'll go one step further. I say Bonds is the greatest hitter of all time.
It's an argument you can make. You have to adjust for errors and everything else. But yeah, it's definitely an argument you can make.
I don't know if this is the case, but it was the only time I ever saw somebody get intentionally walked with the bases loaded.
Yeah.
In a 2-run game. I've never seen that before or since. I don't think we ever will. It's just that crazy how good he was.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I've only ever been to one game in Pac Bell Park, and I picked a day, of course, back in 2008, in which Bonds was sitting on the bench, but the Giants were down in the bottom of the 9th inning, and he came up into the on-deck circle. Everybody got real excited, and then the guy in front of him flew out, and the game ended. So I never actually got to see him hit in person. I got to see him in the on-deck circle, but never hit in person. But yeah, he was insane. It was, yeah. I'm happy Jeter got in. I'm happy Walker got in. But yeah, I don't get the whole who votes for one person, who doesn't vote for one person. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's no rhyme or reason. So.
Yeah, so up next in voting was Omar Vizquel, who went up. I think a lot of people thought he would crack the 50%, and he did, 52.6. One of the greatest defensive players ever. Not the greatest, but one of the best in his era for sure. Maybe not the best hitter, but if you can put together, and I don't care that he played till 45, if you put together 2,877 hits, you're not a liability.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's clearly a compiler by any definition of compiler. But yeah, I think the glove makes up for it in that mind. Here's a question for you. I'm 97% sure Schilling gets in with no first ballot people coming in. I mean, Walker jumped from 54.6 to over 76 this year. Do you think it's possible Vizquel can go from 52?
Yeah, I do.
All the way up with the other people? Because I don't think Clemens and Bonds are getting in next year. There just doesn't seem to be evidence of that. But if Schilling is in, it's almost like you could counterbalance holding your nose and voting for Schilling for the people who don't like him by voting for someone who everybody likes with Vizquel and just justifying him both people getting in. Because I think it's an outside possibility. I think he's going to get high 60s or low 70s, but I don't think he's going to get all the way up there next year.
I think because of the way that the vote could work, they're a lot more open to putting in larger classes. It used to be like they wanted to keep this in such a rarefied air that's maybe too much to a point where, yeah, I get the fact that you want to keep it at such an elite level, but now you have no classes.
Right.
Which we saw, not as you mentioned, not that long ago. Was it 2013? And how fun is that?
2013. We had one back in '96 as well.
Okay, so I mean, it's not fun for anyone, and statistically, there's a lot of like some people who were voted in years or decades ago that have no business being in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I mean, Joe Gordon played for the Yankees, though, so that should have been enough. He played with Mickey Mantle, so there you go.
So no, I honestly think Vizquel's got a much better shot I'd say 50-50.
I think it's a little lower than that, but again, would I be absolutely flabbergasted if he got through? No, definitely not.
Yeah. So then Roland, who you talked about before, so he went from 17.2 to 35.3. It's not unreasonable for him to crack 50.
Agreed. 100% agreed. Yeah, it's interesting for me as a Red Sox fan because Roland was Rookie of the Year the same year Garciaparra was Rookie of the Year. And I just always thought that Garciaparra, pre-injury, before he got hit in the wrist by that pitch, was just going to be one of the greatest players ever. And that Roland was a good player, but not up there originally. But looking over the entirety of his career, I could see the argument for Roland.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me almost of sort of like Ted Simmons, only now we know better.
Right.
Because Simmons was a one and done, and Roland, not that Roland is, obviously he's not, but overall, if you look at there's a lot of things that you can sort of compare them to. Roland was always sort of like that top tier, but you didn't really talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
And it just remind me a lot of Simmons. Who I know we've already said this before, but I'm super happy he got in.
Yeah, absolutely. There's very little evidence that you can point to as to why Simmons shouldn't have been in already. He's, by pretty much any measurement, one of the top 10 catches of all time. This game has been around since, 1886 or whatever. If you're in the top 10 at your position over the last 140 years, I think you probably deserve to be in well before he got in. So it's good for him.
So next up, Billy Wagner. He's gaining more momentum than I thought than I think his career is worthy of. Frankly, 16-7 to 31-7. I'll always point to the fact that in the playoffs he stunk every single time.
Yeah.
But what's your thoughts on Wagner?
The playoff argument is the biggest one against him.
Oh yeah, it is. But it's one that nobody ever talks about whenever they're discussing his career, and I'll do that. I'll mention that, but I mean, he does have a career whip under 1, 422 saves. The argument for him is there. He'd never be on my ballot, but I'm not gonna, wrist slap anyone who does. Where do you think he goes?
I think he moves up too. I mean, I just think that this next year we're going to actually see a bunch of people move up, and then the year after we might see a few move down just because of the people who are going to be coming on. Mm-hmm. In 2022, because the 2022 is going to be the year I think is going to be fascinating, because it'll be the last year for Clemens and Bonds and the first year for Rodriguez, A-Rod, and Ortiz. So I think that year is going to be absolutely fascinating. But I think so we may see people gain this year and then go down again next year just because of space and number of people they can vote for.
Right. So Gary Sheffield could see another jump. He actually doubled his total, 13.6 to 30.5. That's my biggest surprise of this whole thing, is that Sheffield moved up so much because he just seemed dead in the water.
Yeah, and Sheffield clearly was one hell of a baseball player, but again, he's another one dogged by the steroid allegations, and he was also, let's say, a little prickly, which didn't help him. But yeah, it's interesting to see with a lot of people cleared out, people are now, I'm going to say at this point, it's pretty clear that a lot of the people who are voting have a much more relaxed attitude towards the steroids era. That if you're voting for Bonds and Clemens, then it's hard not to vote for Sheffield.
Mm-hmm. Larry Walker will be the first, I believe, he's going to be the first with the Colorado Rockies cap on.
First player ever to play for the Colorado Rockies, even a single game, to get in.
He is?
Yeah, no Hall of Famer before Larry Walker had ever played a game for the Colorado Rockies.
He was the first batter?
Who else do you have for the Rockies?
Oh, okay. No, I was confused. I thought you were saying he was the first ever. He was the first at bat for the first ever Colorado.
No. He's the first ever player who played a single game for the Rockies to get into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, okay.
So no one else who's in the Hall of Fame has ever previously suited up a game for the Rockies, other than Larry Walker.
And I think Todd Helton's going to join him at some point. He didn't move as much as I thought he would. I thought he'd crack 30.
Mm-hmm.
And he came close, 29-2.
Yeah, I mean, he came close. Helton was another hell of a baseball player. And if we've gotten rid of the Coors Field mystique, or if we are not holding steroids against players, we probably shouldn't be holding Coors Field against players. I think Helton's going to have a chance to go up as it goes in. But no one was helped more by Larry Walker getting in than Todd Helton.
Mm-hmm. Manny being Manny didn't move much, 22-8, 28-2. Difference is, and I'll say this again, he was caught and he was suspended under the agreed rule from the baseball union and Major League Baseball. Big difference in my mind.
Absolutely, 100% big difference. Knowing that there was testing taking place and all that other stuff, it's a huge difference. So I can understand the drawing of the line in the sand of pre-drug testing, where it was the Wild West, and post-drug testing, where there's supposed to be rules. Manny is one of the most important players in Red Sox history. Still the greatest free agent signing in the history of the Red Sox. I can understand the division between Bonds and Clemens and Manny, just because of the being caught. I believe he was caught with a drug. Basically, it was a masking agent that was a drug normally used by pregnant women. I can't remember what it was, but I just remember it was like something having to do with estrogen controlling for pregnant women or something like that. It was a really weird thing. It wasn't actually steroids or HGH. It was a masking agent for those things. And there's like literally no reason it was in the system. So,
well, that's Manny being Manny.
Yes. Well, he had to cut off. He had to get strong to cut off all of Johnny Damon's throws from the outfield. So, still one of my most hilarious favorite Red Sox highlights of all time. So,
it's incredible. I can watch Manny Ramirez highlights or just Manny being Manny moments, unless you're what the traveling secretary, then maybe it's not so cool.
Yeah, probably not. That also does not help him.
No, it certainly does not. Who do we have next? Jeff Kent cracked 20%, 27.5. I don't think he's gonna get a jump, but I don't think he's gonna make it.
Yeah, he's only got 4 more years. It's a long way up. When he was playing towards the end of his career, people were talking about where he ranked all time with second baseman and how he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and it had never occurred to me until like 2 years before he retired that he would even be in the conversation. He's also the only person who's ever been on Survivor who's been on a Hall of Fame ballot. So there you go. You got that as well.
Gary Hogaboom didn't make a Pro Football Hall of Fame ballot?
I do not believe Gary Hogaboom will ever make a Pro Football Hall of Fame ballot. But with a organized senior committee, you never know. Kent again, another prickly guy, and his story about slipping while washing the bed of his truck is how we're getting injured, and that being just completely false is one of the funniest dumb stories of all time. I think with 4 years left, Kent's best shot is probably with one of these seniors committees coming up after he's out. It's the same thing going back to McGriff. I think I told you when McGriff dropped off the ballot, it was may have been the best thing for him because he's more likely to get in sooner with the way the seniors committee is built up than he would have had he just been on the ballot and had to keep waiting.
Yeah, so, you mentioned that I think a couple shows ago, and I think you're 100% right.
I mean, this next year is the 2 old time committees, so anybody is very familiar with is going to be getting in. Or, I mean, there will be names like, oh yeah, I've heard that name before, but it's not going to be like people are pounding the table for. But the year after that is going to be the year that he gets considered again. And I think that he has a very, very good shot at making it through. Yeah,
I'd like to see him sort of get another look at this. Andrew Jones, who I really want to see in. I'm clearly in the minority, although it did go up 7.5 to 19.4. Very, very good jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is only Jones's third year.
Yeah, third year.
So him being just under 20 in his third year is a lot better news than Keck being under 30 in his sixth year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a very good possibility that he has an outside shot at making it, even though he's all the way down at under 20 at this point. He has to stand the ballot and weather 2022 and see where he is at that point. But yeah, I think Jones does still have an outside shot of getting it.
Yeah, he was one of my top 5 players when he was active. Just loved watching him play, like, everything he did. So
yeah, he was
maybe a little biased on my part.
The Chipper Andrew teams for the Braves is really, really fun. It's unfortunate they didn't win. I mean, they won all those divisions, but they never actually won a championship, and that's unfortunate. And that probably, if he had a championship, that probably helped his team. So.
True. Sammy Sosa, his highest in total, 13.9.
Yep.
You talked about people being prickly. Here's someone being completely fake. I love how I'll never forget how he those three things in Congress. Mark McGuire not there to talk about the past. Rafi's finger pointing and gay, what gay. Sammy forgetting English.
Yeah, Sammy forgetting English was not a good look. Also not a good look, whatever he has done with the skin lightning stuff he's doing now.
That was the best segue ever.
Sammy has no shot of ever getting in. I don't think Sammy is ever going to see the Hall of Fame.
Does Sammy make a veterans ballot committee? Or not committee, a vote. Or a ballot?
Does McGuire?
McGuire did, yeah.
No, I'm saying, does he get on one of the committees? I'm sure he'll be on one of the voting committees. Do you think McGuire ever gets a shot to get in?
I think I think they really should take another look at him.
That's not what I asked, though. Do you think he's ever actually going to get a shot to get in? Because I think McGuire's case is slightly less complicated than Sosa's case. And if you don't think McGuire's ever getting in, then I don't think there's any chance Sosa's getting in. The two of them are just too indelibly linked. And I don't think either's really ever going to see the Hall.
I'll also maintain that I really feel that the reason they brought this from 15 years to 10 years is to get these guys off the ballot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. We've said this before. The way to solve the problem wasn't to drop the number of years. The way to solve the problem is open up the number of people could vote for.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do that just because they were tired of having the steroids discussion, which is dumb because they would still be having the steroids discussion, regardless one or the other. I mean, McGuire dropped off in 2016, which means next year would have been his 15th time on the ballot. McGuire in 2016 was at 12.3%. So their odds of him getting it at this point aren't great, although Larry Walker was at 15.5 that same year.
Mm-hmm.
But the odds of him getting in weren't that great. But we still have A-Rod coming, and he was suspended for a whole year for steroids. So it's not like the steroid conversation's gone away. It's just a very strange way of solving a problem.
Yeah, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. It just isn't.
No.
Let's see. Pettit went from.
Go ahead. I mean, Ryan Braun is still playing.
True.
And Braun has an MVP, and I don't mean to offend any Brewers fans who may be listening, but Ryan Braun is, I think, the single most despicable person in this whole steroids era. Just what he tried to do in destroying the guy's career who was in charge of his sample. Basically, with the whole chain of custody and everything else, and then coming out and admitting it afterwards after basically raking this guy through the coals and threatening to sue him and trying to get him fired and all sorts of stuff. When he clearly knew he was doing something wrong, it's the single most despicable thing anybody did in the entire steroids era. Even worse than Rafi pointing to Congress, knowing he was going to be suspended for steroids in like a month and saying that he had never done it, which is previously the most despicable thing. That Ryan Braun's actions are the worst thing anyone who in the steroid era has done. And he's still playing. So, I mean, we're at least 9 years probably from him. He's probably got like 3 or 4 more years, so probably 9 years from him coming on the ballot. So add 10, we're at 19 years before anyone else, before we're maybe finally done with this conversation. And we won't even be done there because we'll still have people in the seniors committee. So
Imagine that, though. I mean, like, your job is to collect piss, and someone's making your life worse.
it's like I saw a product. Actually, I've heard there was a comedian, I can't remember who it was, who was talking about it, but I saw it in the pet store. It was like something you spray on dog poop to make it taste worse, so dogs won't eat it. I'm like, what are you spraying on poop to make it taste worse? It's already poop.
I don't know. I just find by telling my dog no, that seemed to work enough times.
Yeah, like I don't get it. We actually, so my hello hometown. This is a really stark tangent, but I had to bring it up. My little hometown has an invasion of Canadian geese we've been trying to get rid of for years and years and years. And at one point, they decided the way to get rid of them was to take like the lawn spreading things and fill them with grape Kool-Aid mix and spray the grape Kool-Aid mix all over the grass like you would with fertilizer. And somehow that was going to make the grass taste bad to the Canadian geese, and they would leave. I know you're going to be shocked to find this out. It did not. It was not effective.
I was going to ask, like, and why Canadian geese? Like, what did we do?
It's you guys. If there's the true Canadian foreign invaders are those damn geese. My daughter is terrified of them. We
Really?
have packs of them that roam around my neighborhood. It will hiss at you if you get too close.
Huh. They always, I always have the dogs.
We literally have 40 to 50 geese like hanging out all together, walking around through the neighborhood. So, yeah.
Well, good. Canadians like to run in packs.
Yes, true, and they're tough. It's a hockey thing. So, anyway.
All right. So Andy Pettitte, 9.9 to 11.3, not looking good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he only used steroids once, so. He at least came out and admitted it and whatever. I don't necessarily believe he only used steroids once, but regardless, he's at year 2. It's possible he could go up. I mean, Andrew Jones was only at 7.5% last year.
Mm-hmm.
He jumped all the way up to almost 20. 11.3 in year 2 is not terrible, based off the way things are going. But I still think it's a bit of an uphill climb for him.
Actually, Pettitte is sort of like the anti-Ryan Braun, because that's your playbook. It's steroid users, right. If you get caught, that's how you handle it. I
used it one time. I'm sorry. I will take my punishment and move on.
Yep. And pretty much people did.
Yeah, pretty much people did. Well, he was also pitching on the same team as Clemens at the time. And everyone thought that Clemens was using, and there was no proof of it. So the fact that Pettitte came out made him seem even more stand-up versus his former teammate. So
yeah, I guess sometimes it doesn't help, or it doesn't hurt to have sometimes an asshole teammate that make your own character look so much better.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe that's why Jeff Kent wasn't considered quite a prickly guy as much as he really is.
Right.
Barry Bonds looking at you. Speaking of, actually, no, it's not speaking of that. I'm thinking of his dad, Bobby Bonds. Bobby Abreu just made it. I thought he would just squeak through. I'm glad he did. But I don't see him making it past the third ballot, though. It's going to be tough.
I mean, he would. Yeah, like I said, that 2022 class is going to be interesting for the guys here at the bottom of the ballot. It's going to be interesting how many people stick next year from the group coming in. Like I said, I don't think there are any more than 3. Burley, Hudson, and Hunter are really the only ones I think have a legitimate shot. No offense to Grady Sizemore and his family. But Abreu is on the ballot, which is good. He has another shot. I mean, Andrew Jones was at 7.3, 7.5, and now up at almost 20. So if Abreu can just stay on, and whether the 2022, we'll see. But he needs to make a decent jump next year. If he only gets up to like 6 or 7%, 2022 may knock him out.
Mm-hmm. So anything worth noting for the ones who did not make it? I mean, I don't think anyone really expected them to. I know that White Sox fans were would definitely pounding for Paul Konerko, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He's a one-trick pony, and it was one hell of a trick.
Right. Yeah, Konerko was an interesting case. I've been a little surprised Jason Giambi, who I know is also tied to Sarah's era, that at least won an MVP, wasn't a little bit higher. I thought he might approach 5%. And I do want to know who votes for Brad Penny and not Josh Beckett. But, again, Brad Penny got one vote, so who am I complaining about? The idea, though, that Josh Beckett, who is an integral part of 2 World Series winning teams, actually 3 World Series winning teams, and Brad Penny, who is a pitcher, would have Brad Penny would have win more votes bothers me a little bit. Other than that, or J.J. Poots as well. Maybe someone just thought his name was funny.
Well, it is.
But, yeah,
it's a funny name. If I were at one point, I'm going to do like the top 100 of best or not the best names in sports, and that's right up there.
Up there with Rusty Kuntz as well?
That one, although my favorite one ever, former Blue Jay Stubby Clapp. That's number 1.
Stubby Clapp is pretty good one. I also enjoyed the, I believe she was Slovenian. She may have been Slovakian. I don't remember. Figure skater Ivana Mandic. So it's actually Mandic because it's like that soft C for the Eastern European stuff because MANDIC with the little thing underneath. So it looks like Ivana Mandic. So I always thought that was a pretty good one.
That's
former
spectacular.
Former Indians hitting coach Dick Pole was up there as well. And Dick Trickle, the former race car driver. So, although I guess if you replace any of those bad names of Dick with Harry, I always think they're worse. Harry Trickle sounds worse to me than Dick Trickle.
Harry's just a great name for so many reasons, and that's one of them.
Yes, that is one of them. But yeah, so all in all, we're pretty happy with this. There's no one who fell off the ballot we feel shouldn't have, and there's no one who. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be too many surprises for next year. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. The only, I think, surprise is Kurt Schilling going to have somebody with him. That'd be the only thing. Yeah. Is can Vizquel sort of jump that far up? Some people are thinking that Nolan could just jump all the way. I don't see that, but
that's too far a jump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be the rise of Larry Walker was unprecedented, so I guess anything's possible. But to go to more than double your vote total, like I mean, he did double his vote total plus another 5% to jump in. That's a lot to ask in one season or one voting period.
All right, so we have baseball. So that's sort of come and done. I know we'll sort of talk about when we learn more about who that one voter is, if we learn, because we may not.
Sure.
Not everything gets released. Yeah.
Who knows? We could find out that somebody decided to protest again by putting in a blank ballot. If that's the case, then that person just needs to vote.
Exactly. Or if maybe he voted Brad Penny.
Yeah. If that person voted for 9 people in Brad Penny or J.J. Poots instead of Jeter, that may also be cause for revocation of vote.
Do you think it could be like someone associated with the Marlins?
It could be someone with the Marlins. It could entirely be someone with the Marlins who's upset with the situation. That one I'd almost respect. Like, hey, you're ruining a baseball team. I know we're talking about you as a player, but your entire baseball life has to be reflected in that. And if they come out and say that I can at least, I don't necessarily agree with in what we're talking about, but I can at least I respect that reasoning.
Because that's the only valid reason, and I don't even consider that really valid either. But I'm like you. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. I respect some kind of morality that this guy or woman, because it could be a female,
right?
Voter.
It's also possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It could be, like I said, that one and the one where, hey, he was getting in anyway, and I wanted to make sure, like, maybe someone's 10th person was Konerko, right? And they thought that, hey, if voting for Konerko is more important to me than making sure and that he gets on the ballot, stays on the ballot, or their 10th person was Abreu. Like, making sure they stay on the ballot is more important to me than making sure Jeter gets 100%. So, I mean, that's also an argument I can see.
Mm-hmm. That one I think I'd accept a little more. I still wouldn't like it, but I'd accept it.
Right. I just think if you're a person who's going to do that, just come out and take the heat originally. You know what I mean? Don't hide behind it. Like, over 225 of the voters or something like that published their votes before they went in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just be one of those people. Take the heat ahead of time and let it go.
And actually, that's a good point to just sort of like give a shout out to those who decide to do it. You know, clearly you don't have to. You know that you're going to get blasted no matter what you say.
Right.
And you know you're doing it anyway, and it's in this era of social media. You're gonna hear it right away from no matter what you do, you're gonna piss somebody off. And good on you guys and gals for doing it. It's great. For those who aren't, what are you hiding for?
Well, I mean, yeah, the reason they're hiding is they are afraid of the Twitter backlash. There was one. I'm trying to think of the main guy who does all the compiling on Twitter. I can't think of his name right now. But one of the writers, one of the voters came after him and basically said by him compiling all the things and putting it in one place, he was promoting violence against the writers.
What? Because
people on Twitter were coming after. Someone came after him jokingly, or I mean, it looks bad on Twitter, but clearly was tongue in cheek, saying that if you're wrong, I'm gonna have to. Someone's gonna have to beat you up or something. It was clearly tongue in cheek, and he's like, "See, your compiling stuff is bringing violence against the writers." I can see if I can find it on Twitter, and I'm just like, "What are you talking about, dude?"
Wow.
Hold on, I'll see if I can find it.
You know, the funny thing is, you know, my dad said I wasn't tough enough growing up. I sure feel a lot tougher now. My God.
Yeah.
It takes nothing to get people worked up these days. Nothing.
Yeah. So, anyway, is anything else you think we need to cover? I had one more thing I think we need to talk about in baseball.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think that's the big retirement this week in football.
Oh, okay. Eli Manning.
Today, actually.
Yes.
With Mr. Eli Manning. So I'm a Patriots fan, so anything I say about him is clearly going to be biased to begin with. So let's start with you. How do you feel about Manning as a candidate for getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I've been on the fence with him like for years. I'm still on the fence with him. I wouldn't hate it if he got into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I wouldn't hate it if he didn't get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When he's eligible, he will receive a decent rank on the main core list. That's for certain. The pros, obviously, he's got the 2 Super Bowl rings. He did well in those games, which definitely matters. 4 Pro Bowls, that's not bad. It's a lot hard. I think people don't understand how hard it is to become a Pro Bowl in a quarterback position. It's a lot easier in a lot of the other positions.
Mm-hmm.
But never a first-team All-Pro, never a second-team All-Pro, 500 record.
Yeah.
So when some people are comparing him to Jim Plunkett, I don't see it. Plunkett, yeah, and I get why they say that. 500 record. What else? 500 record, 2 Super Bowl rings. But Plunkett, my main argument there is Plunkett was a guy that their team always looked for somebody else for years. Eli didn't have that until the last couple of years.
I mean that is true. Plunkett was a Patriot originally, and it's not like the Patriots of the '70s had some incredible history of quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can the Plunkett argument. I mean, he was a one-time Super Bowl MVP. He won 2 Super Bowls, and that's pretty much your argument, honestly, because the stats even against his contemporaries just don't match up.
Right. Yeah. So whereas Eli's does. You know,
Does he though?
Well, they're not. They're not bad.
I mean, he's seventh currently on the all-time pass list. He's going to fall to eighth as soon as Roethlisberger plays a game again. So he's going to fall to eighth on this list, and other people are going to pass him coming up. Rodgers will pass him. Ryan's going to pass him. Folks like that. But here's my question for you, and I know you brought up the 4 Pro Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
He played 16 years, right? His team went to the playoffs 6 times in 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
In a time with expanded folks. It was to the Pro Bowl 4 times, led the league in fumbles 3 times. So that's not the best thing going in his favor either. And had he not won that last game against Washington,
he'd have a losing record.
Where they sat Daniel Jones, he would have had a losing record for his career, which is something all Patriots fans are hoping for. Honestly, he went to the playoffs 6 times. 4 times was one and done. The other 2 times he took a team to the Super Bowl that beat the greatest team never to win a Super Bowl in 2007. And then he took a team to the Super Bowl and took the single worst team, I think you could argue, all time to win a Super Bowl, those 2011 Giants. They were outscored by 6 points in the regular season. And brought them to a championship against the Patriots as well. And essentially his best argument is that he has the 2 Super Bowl rings. He beat a historical team in one of those Super Bowls. Although if David Tyree doesn't use Sickum, we're having a whole separate conversation. Again, that's my bitterness showing.
Yeah, and under the current rules, they would have called that play dead before he even threw the ball.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could Seymour, who may get in the Hall of Fame, basically had him wrapped up and spun him around, and yeah, the play probably would have been dead. But it wasn't at the time. I'm not going to say that. And if I wonder if Rodney Harrison breaks that play up, what his Hall of Fame chances are at this point too. I mean, he was 8-4 in the playoffs with 2 runs where he went 4-0 twice, and then 4 times went 0-4, and then 10 other years he didn't make it. If his last name wasn't Manning, I don't know what this conversation really is. And if he hadn't played for the Giants, he's Phillip Rivers with a better last name, 2 Super Bowls, and having played for the Giants. And now, granted, there's a lot of things working in his favor. But I just feel like, compared to the other quarterbacks of his era, you have to ask how many quarterbacks from the 16 years he played are actually going to get in. Because he's not better than his brother, right?
Right.
He's not better than Brady.
Not better than Breeze. The Saints fan. I got to throw that in.
Not better than Breeze. Not better than Rodgers. I would put Russell Wilson over him.
I put Matt Ryan over him too.
I put Matt Ryan over him. So now we're at best 7th in quarterbacks, and I'm sure there's somebody else I'm missing somewhere along the way, because this is just off the top of my head here. So, I mean, are we really going to be putting 7, 8, 9 quarterbacks from that 20-year period into the Hall all at once? I mean, it's possible because with the explosion of statistics, but and passing yards and everything like that. But he's just really good. And I'm sorry, I left out Roethlisberger, and I left out Rivers. Mm-hmm. The Roethlisberger and Rivers. So now we're up to 9 at this point. He's either 8th or 9th with Rivers, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's just hard for me to imagine we're going to have that deep we're going to have that deep a field of quarterbacks getting in from this 20-year period, which would be kind of unprecedented in the history of football. So, I mean, is it possible with the explosion of stats? Yeah, because if you look at the top passers in terms of yardage in pro football history, going to number 21 is 22 is Joe Flacco. So we have Flacco at 22, and then in front of him you have Stafford, Rodgers, Ryan, Manning, Roethlisberger, Rivers, Brady, and Breeze. I mean, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the top 22 are currently playing, and now 8 with Eli retiring. So stats have just kind of gone crazy. I mean, Matthew Stafford is going to be passing Eli probably by the time he's done. And do you think Matthew Stafford's a Hall of Famer?
No, I don't.
No. I mean, the dude's never won a playoff game. And part of that is it's not his fault necessarily. He plays for the Lions, and that's part of the problem. But still, like, he's just such a, without the Super Bowls, he has no argument. But he has. Well, I guess the argument is yards. But basically, he's
this generation's Joe Namath.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wonder what Namath would look like in these passing roles. Because it's a whole different thing. Yeah, what Eli would look like if with those roles back then. But I guess you could say that about any quarterback now. I don't want to seem like a bitter Patriot.
No, and everything you're saying, I totally agree with. It just always comes back to that one, because his resume essentially, when it comes right down to it, 2 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVPs.
2 Super Bowl MVPs.
And those are 2 giant, not looking for a pun there, but giant accomplishments that for a lot of people will overshadow that. And that's sort of why Namath got in almost. Super Bowl, because what he did in Super Bowl III, and that was probably one of the most important wins in the history of football. Yeah. And,
agreed.
Yeah. So is he worthy for that reason? I don't know. Namath to me was a borderline guy myself, but Manning falls on that. I don't even know what side of the fence to me he's on. If I was in that committee, he's the one guy I'd need to be talked in or talked out of, because I just don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with that.
Because take away the Super Bowls, we're not even having this discussion.
No, of course.
Yeah, or if you got there and lost, even.
I mean, he like I said, he almost led the league in fumbles as many times as he went to the Pro Bowl. Like, he had 7 career rushing TDs and 125 career fumbles. I mean, again, he's not a running quarterback, but still. I have trouble with it, but it's going to be interesting coming up for years now, particularly when, at some point Brady's going to retire. At some point Breeze is going to retire, and I can't imagine Manning is off the ballot before they get there.
No, well.
So then he's going to be up against, both those guys in their 40s. I don't know how much longer Roethlisberger's going to play. That dude gets beaten up all the time. He'll be 38 next season. Rivers will be 39 next year. Who knows how much longer he's going to want to play. He's officially moved out of San Diego altogether now.
Yeah. So he's a free agent. So
he's a free agent, which is why people are thinking he's going. People thinking that Brady may end up in San Diego, or with the Chargers as the only other alternative to the Patriots. Is because that's a good team who needs a quarterback, but I can't imagine Brady wanting to play in front of 30,000 of the other team's fans every week. Like that stadium situation is so bad.
Oh my God, it's awful. It kind of reminds you. It reminds you why LA had no football team for a while.
Yeah, they didn't have a football team for 20 years. All of a sudden, we had 3 teams trying to go there. 2 went. The third one's going to Vegas. And nobody really knows that from what I can tell, the Rams don't make a huge ripple out there. They have more of a ripple because they actually have fans who are probably in their 50s and 60s, whereas the Chargers fans are still in San Diego. There's no reason for them to be there. There's just no reason for them to be there. I understand that the San Diego stadium lease and whatever was a mess, but it's just dumb. They're the San Diego Superchargers. There's that amazing '70s song about them that they should just go back to San Diego.
San Diego. I'm not familiar with that. San Diego Superchargers.
Oh, you know the San Diego Superchargers song?
No.
San Diego Superchargers, San Diego Chargers. It's amazing. You have just
I'm going to do that right as soon as we're done, for sure. Is it as good as the Baseball Boogie by the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I think it's better than Baseball Boogie. It's right up there with me for the Brass Bonanza with the Hartford Whalers, the old Whalers song that they used to play whenever they scored. So.
Oh, the Hartford Whalers, man, God. I don't think we'll ever see another pro sports team in. Well, no, that's not true. They have what, the WNBA, I think.
They do have the Sun, yes, the Connecticut Sun, named after
Sun.
the casino they play in.
Yeah, because when I think of Connecticut, I think of all those great sunny days.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, it's Connecticut. It's the nutmeg and sun state. So.
All right.
Yeah, as we say in New England, Rhode Island is quaint, Massachusetts is historic, New Hampshire is rugged, Maine is beautiful, Vermont is bucolic, and Connecticut. So.
Love it.
Connecticut is the state without a soul. So, yeah. So, anyways, I just thought we needed to cover that. Is there anything else you think we need to do tonight?
No, because next week will be
for number 3.
Yeah, next week I think that's the perfect time to do a football preview. Maybe
makes sense.
Yeah, and then I'm sure there's going to be another major retirement. There always is. And we can sort of look at that. And so I guess Super Bowl prediction, or do you want to make that next week?
Let's do that next week. Let's talk about that next week, since we're going to be doing football anyway. Actually, there's one more thing I do want to mention, and I just want your opinion on this.
Sure.
I saw someone say that with next year's Rock Hall class, we have it's Jay-Z, by the way, from everything I'm reading, and not Eminem. But with Jay-Z and the Foo Fighters going to be up on the ballot, someone said that this is going to automatically be the greatest class to go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since 2005 when U2 and the Pretenders got in, because it's the first time since then we will have had 2 bands or 2 musicians which are still active going in as first ballot Hall of Famers. What do you think of that statement?
That's not for next year. That'd be 2 years from now, right?
No, it's next year. The Foo Fighters and Jay-Z.
I think it's 2 years from now.
It's next. I promise you. It's next year.
Are you sure?
100%.
Well, if that's the case, that would be incredible. Because I was almost positive that was 2020. They're up for the class of 2022.
Nope, they are up. Hold on.
All right, let's take a look.
So
now,
that's
All right. Because I had them for 2022.
All right, so let's just go to Foo Fighters here.
All right.
Foo Fighters' first release that would count would be the studio album Foo Fighters, which is 1995, which puts them up for next year. Jay-Z, first release, Reasonable Doubt's album was 1996, but his first single, was In My Lifetime, 1995.
Well, look at that. Because
so both of them were 95, which means both of them should be eligible for next year.
So I'm looking, because I was looking at, because I have a lot of sometimes the research I'll do on that is on Future Rock Legends. They don't have them. Wait, where do they have them at all? Let's see, Foo Fighters. This is going to bother me now all day. Eligible in 2020. Oh, look at that. Okay.
Yeah, because they're still in the back. They're still in the back end of stuff because it used to be a year ahead. You voted 2019 for 2020. This is the first year it's gone beyond that.
Oh, and then that's Eminem right. Eminem's the year after.
Was 96.
Mm-hmm.
So Eminem will be the next class, but Jay-Z and the Foo Fighters. So if they're both up, would you agree with that sentence that it's the greatest class since 2005, in regards to who else gets in?
It
seems like a strange sentence.
Well, it could be the greatest show.
It would be an incredible show.
Yeah, I'd say that. I don't know about necessarily the greatest class though. That might be.
Yeah, I can't remember who one of the folks I follow on Twitter with all that was saying that. And I thought it was a very interesting article. But anyway, I just want to throw that out there. It's just a thought going forward. So anyway, so next week we're going to go diving into pro football, right?
Absolutely. And then probably the week after that.
And yeah, with the results.
Right.
Makes sense.
All right. As always, thank you so much, and looking forward to next week.
Me too, man. Take care.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.